All right, so our next event now is like this a panel on representation in video games where the social justice and the market align. And this has been part of our it's organized by Counterpoints, which is Counterpoints Arts is a leading national organization in the field of arts, migration, and cultural change. And they support the arts by and about refugees and migrants and produce a range of programs in the UK and internationally, including Refugee Week, Pop Change, and Plataforma Festival. I will let each panelist introduce themselves. There's four of you, so give you the mic and the floor is yours. So looking forward to your discussion.
Hi, hello. My name is Laith Elzubaidi. I am the Pop Change producer at Counterpoints Arts. We're really excited to be here today. I am joined by three other very lovely people. And of course, we are streaming live on Twitch, which I just found out, which is great. If anybody watching live at home wants to know what the vibe of the room is, because they can't see, there are literally thousands of people. It is just filled to the brim. They're chanting our name. The mic can't pick it up. There are just people are throwing their children at us, begging us to raise them. And we're from. So I'm from Counterpoints. Faz, sitting to my left, is also from Counterpoints. Faz, if you could introduce yourself.
So my name is Hossam Fazulla, Faz for short, and I work as a digital producer for Counterpoints Arts. I also am a video game illustrator and video game playtester and cultural consultant as well. I used to be a video game journalist. I worked for BBC, but I quit.
Hi, I'm Tommy Sim'an. I'm an actor, and I do quite a lot of voice acting and a bit of mocap for video games.
What are you an actor in?
So I graduated drama school in 2020, so during COVID, but sort of had a few games since then. So first game was Expeditions Rome, so I played a load of different characters in that. Then did Baldur's Gate 3, so I played Orpheus in Baldur's Gate 3, if anyone's played that. And then most recently...
the Game of the Year award-winning Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 3. Sick game. And then I just most recently played Sargon, so the player character in the new Prince of Persia.
The literal Prince of Persia we have.
Is he? Oh, I don't know. But I think that's also a sick game. Anyway, yeah, so sort of a range of experience across... that sort of thing.
Maryam.
Hi, I'm Maryam. I'm currently a student, but I do content creation on TikTok, and I make clips about Overwatch and Dead by Daylight, and I'll probably expand into different games.
There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. If anybody would like a bit more information about Counterpoints, we're an organization that supports artists from refugee and migrant backgrounds. We have lots and lots of projects. We also run the biggest festival celebrating refugee art in the world, Refugee Week. Before I joined, I did not realize that people could just own those weeks, and that there are people who just run. I thought it was like, International Women's Day, where it was just like nobody owns that. No, they own it, they run it, and they operate in over 28 countries across the globe. And we definitely encourage you to come down and just enjoy all the events that we have programmed in the middle of June for Refugee Week this year. We also so my job at Counterpoints is that I sort of take the lead on the projects that are to do with using pop culture to create social change. So we have partnerships with Netflix, we have partnerships with BAFTA, we've done lots of events with them, we have lots of events coming up with them. We are also, we've worked on things. We also have a consultancy where we connect artists who are from refugee and migrant backgrounds who are extremely qualified in their field, and connect them with productions across the globe, whether that be for video games, whether that be for films. We've done everything from, massive Hollywood blockbusters like Riz Ahmed's Exit West, which is happening with Netflix and will release as soon as the director's done doing Blade at Marvel. And after that, and we've also done things that are like smaller British independent films, and we've also worked on some games as well. And so we do a lot of events like this as well, where we just try to create conversations around some of the work that we're doing and also some of the themes that are, inevitably come up with these types of things. Today we thought we'd do something really special where we thought it would be a great opportunity if we're talking about video games. And of course we have our lovely friends here. Just so happens by accident, it's an all Arab panel, which is which I feel is apt because you may know us from every single Call of Duty game. We are like, no one can say that we are suffering from underrepresentation in video games. It's just the type of representation that we're not thrilled about. But like in terms of seeing us on screen, we are definitely on screen. It's just it's not ideal. I have shot more people that look like my family than anybody else in video games growing up, and I think that's I'm just it's true. And so we thought it'd be really nice to sort of do an all Arab panel and just talk about some of the good, some of the bad, and then I thought actually maybe a great place to start would be Prince of Persia, just because I don't know how many people know about this, but the newest Prince of Persia that just came out is very much an effort to decolonize Prince of Persia, because the original Prince of Persia games, as amazing as they were, did not necessarily put that much effort into perhaps representing the cultures that were on screen, to the extent that Jake Gyllenhaal felt like he was the perfect person to play the Prince of Persia when they did the film adaptation. So Tommy, I just thought we'd start off with maybe just telling us about the process that the game team went through.
No, exactly. I think it's one of those things where obviously people are more aware now of like, oh, if you're going to use a culture, like you have to like do it correctly. Like the chat about authenticity there was really interesting, because with Prince of Persia it's a very funny one, because, and I'm not speaking on behalf of like Ubisoft or anyone, but this is just like from my interpretation of the whole thing, is like it's like a mythological context, isn't it? Like it's not real, but also at the same time you're using like the sort of the rough period of like the ancient and part of the ancient Persian Empire. And yeah, it was really like, when I went in to start doing it, I was really excited, thought the artwork was really cool, thought they've made some amazing efforts in terms of like people involved at all levels, like was just being spoken about, coming from like whether like Persia or the region in general, but kind of being a lot more on it with understanding how important it was to actually like engage. And so I feel like, I don't know if has anyone played it? Anyone here played it? No? Prince of Persia? The new one? Yeah? So, oh, not the new one. No. Okay. First one, okay. Well, so like the new one, basically what they've done is they've gone back to the kind of like side-scroller format, Metroidvania, like, but with kind of quite cool modern artwork. But using a lot of like ancient Persian art, architecture, places, mythology, and like really going in on that. And then the same on the music front. Like they had a composer called Mentrix, who she's a Persian woman who lives in Berlin, like multi-instrumentalist, really amazing, and the soundtrack's sick. So they like really went for it. But then when the first trailer dropped, there was a lot of like, again, I'm quite new to all of this, so I didn't know like there's quite like a toxic presence online. People were really angry because the Prince of Persia is a darker shade of white. Like, Prince of Persia is not white. So like that people were very like basically really racist online. The character has dreads, for example, and
a lot of people don't seem to know that actually there's quite a fair few people from
that
region that have dreads.
Well, I was going to say, like, because if we're looking era time, it's like Zoroastrianism's kind of like at the fore of the empire if you're going to place it in a context, and like there's a lot of like, for a long time in the region in general, like dreads are associated with spirituality, like sort of the high up priests or whatever, this kind of thing. So anyway, that, and like him being brown, like people were talking, like I was reading comments that were like, I don't know, it was like this like double level of racism that was like outraged that, because also there are like Afro-Iranian people too, if he happens to be Afro-Iranian, like people were being, basically there's like this double level of like angry that he might be black, and also angry at like being like, this isn't Persian. It was a really odd, like, I kind of like was looking at these comments. I realized quite quickly, obviously, it's not a healthy sort of thing to do. But I was quite gutted because I was like, they're putting in so much effort here, and like the response is pretty shocking. But then it's interesting because when you look at the majority in terms of the response, actually it's quite positive. It's just a very loud kind of like presence minority. But interesting just thinking about what you're talking about there in terms of like the conversation you were having with the guy who was here about consumerism and like what the consumers want. I sort of feel like it's a bit of a lazy out to say, yeah, but the consumers want it. So because with this, for instance, there was a big negative backlash initially. But the game's come out and people really like the game and it's gone down really well and that kind of thing. So it's like the proof's sort of in the pudding. Do you know what I mean? Like obviously there's like, talking about control as well, like you were saying, part of the thing that people like is familiarity and control. That's why we go to like genres of films or like, you know, gaming, whatever it is. But so when it like shifts so dramatically, you know, in terms of the fact that, oh, it's not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Prince of Persia. It's like, and no longer always like brunette and white. Oh no, hang on, he's actually brown. Like, what, you know, whoa. And like that, like shifts there. There's like this sort of angry reaction, but then, like, yeah, there's like any like birthing anything is painful, isn't it? Like there's the initial thing, but once you get going and actually it's very like the game's good, the reaction's been really positive and people kind of accept it. So I sort of feel like, yeah, there's always going to be a difficult moment, but sorry, I've gone on like a very winding rant, but yeah, like just kind of in relation to what you were saying, I think it does, yeah, like, but anyway, the main thing I was going to say was I feel like Ubisoft like really did make the effort, and I worked on it at Side, and like they were really on it in terms of pretty much everyone involved in the game is from the region. Yeah, like, and sort of the general respect given to like the artwork, the music, the setting, the kind of want to delve into Persian mythology, all of this stuff I thought was really sick. So all in all, good experience. And I feel like the game like reflects that. It's a good game.
Well, yeah, it's sort of actually quietly quite a revolutionary moment, because if you look at what that franchise, you know, at one point that franchise was enormous, and it still is. And for that to sort of really, for the people behind that game to really have taken a look at that franchise and go, actually, you know what, we've made quite a lot of mistakes. Let's see how we can make the best version of this. And then actually really follow through on that is amazing.
Yeah, in spite of like getting backlash.
Yeah.
Like actually just being like, no, we're going to double down on this. We're going to do it. So that's, again, I feel interesting from the point that the gentleman here was saying about, yeah, but, you know, what about the market? Maybe I'm like sort of reducing, like it's a bit reductive to say that about what he was saying, but yeah, I get that, but also I feel like how do you make any change then? Like, you know, like it's a two-way thing, and if the game is good, then people are going to play it ultimately and enjoy it and buy it, and then like sort of gradually accept the fact that it's a bit different. Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, this is actually a thing that Maryam, we were talking about outside, where you were talking about how actually there's some very big games at the moment that are current, like, you know, have diverse members of cast and so on and so forth.
So I also, touching on your point, Assassin's Creed that came out last year, October, it's based on, I think it's the 9th century of Iraq, so really old, but the NPCs have like great Arabic dialect, the environment's really rich, so I think, yeah, the shift is changing. And in terms of good Arab representation, in Overwatch, there's 2 characters called Anna and Farah, and they have Arabic voice lines, which are very accurate. I know Anna says, Rawiham awitek, which means show them your strength, and she does it really well. Yeah, I think there's a really good shift going on in the recent years.
It is like a really genuinely like sort of amazing shift, because you know, most of the video games I've played, if an Arabic line is being said, it's quite often Allahu Akbar as they're storming a building. So ideally, it's great that we're sort of moving away from those representations, because, you know, Overwatch is an enormous game.
Massive. I know in Siege, there's a map called Border, and it's based in Iraq, and there's just like this crazy Iraqi guy screaming in the background just to like emphasize that this is a war map.
Well,
Yeah.
I think there's very, it's the thing that we've spoken about as well, where it's just like a lot of the maps that we played on when we were younger, especially in the likes of Call of Duty and so on and so forth. It's just like, I would look at those sometimes. It's like, oh, my auntie lives there. And it's just like, there is this sort of weird, speaking about the idea of like liminal space and so on and so forth, there's a really weird sort of, scenario to be put in where we're from these countries that are being presented in this way that we don't know it as. And it's just so baked in. And of course, like, not to mention the fact that like quite a lot of these video games are made in collaboration with like the US government and the US military, and it's sort of like, okay, at what point is this propaganda, and at what point do we decide that actually we shouldn't be okay with this? If I don't know if people have seen, but like it's essentially been confirmed that the next Call of Duty game will be about the Iraq War, and judging, as an Iraqi, judging on the way that they have handled previous historical conflicts, I don't necessarily think that development team has the knowledge or gravitas to be able to pull off a respectful video game or any piece of art about that period of time. And at the same time, it will, millions and millions and millions of people will play those games. And there's seemingly no real pushback, also from the sort of video game journalist world, there isn't necessarily that much being said about it. And on that point, I'd love to come to you, Faz, who you worked at BBC covering quite a few video game topics, and also have worked as a video game tester. I don't know, well, you can take my mic.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna start from the beginning. So I grew up in the 90s, and so I played DOS, and I played NES, SNES, and to Switch now, and all the games that are there nowadays. So I was a gamer before 9/11 and after 9/11, and that's when the shift happened in the representation of Arabs. So suddenly we went from snake charmers and sort of like belly dancers, witches kind of thing. And I remember favorites like Metal Slug and an arcade game called Arabian Fight that has a game that you play in ancient Egypt. Suddenly it's Arabian, but suddenly it's just like this pharaohs going around. It's all mixed up. And then yeah, so that was also a bit weird. We loved these, we love to play these levels, just because we see something that we're familiar with, even though there's something in common between this and the next one that I'm going to talk about, is that in both you always kill the Arabs. That's what you do, which leaves you as a child in a really weird headspace. But and then yeah, so that was like kind of the good period, and then comes 9/11, and that's when I grew a bit older, and we were going to cyber cafes and playing Counter-Strike. And in Counter-Strike, if anybody played it, you either are a CT, which is counter-terrorism, yeah, or a terrorist. Yeah, we would always choose the terrorist, just because it's the kind of Arab-looking kind of thing. And you just have to keep the hostages. You have your own kind of thing. It's so weird. So we were programmed as children to play terrorists. So by the West world. You want to say something?
No. But it's really interesting because, of course, you were telling me outside about how it's very considering that context of how you've grown up.
Yeah.
Especially when you went on to go and work on video games.
So yeah, so also again in the 90s, the coolest job ever was to be a video game tester, right? So I came here, I've studied digital media and cultural studies, and I wanted to work in the video game field. So I applied to hundreds of jobs, and there's a lot of jobs of localizer or kind of cultural consultant, something like that. That's what I wanted to do. But then I have a problem because my name is Hossam Fazulla, and that's a name a lot of people mistake as Muhammad. It's just you just kind of unfortunately, you have less chances when you have an Arab, like an apparent Arab name. Um, so so I had to kind of like, you know, settle for a job that is like an Arabic cultural video game tester for a studio that I cannot name, and they work with a lot of big other studios, and they do that. They kind of hire a lot of people from different backgrounds to kind of check the games and see culturally and linguistically and stuff like that. But this is just like kind of it wasn't like really. So basically, as Arabic gets paid the least, and you also there treated like you are, you know, you're playing as a job. So why do you even need money? So you get even. So I was working in London with way lower than even the UK wage, not even the London wage. It was like yeah, I think it was like £8.50 an hour, something like that. And then it's everything is on the superficial level kind of thing. So you kind of you can be taken seriously if you spotted like a text that is completely wrong. But other than that, if you go while your job is actually reporting on anything that is culturally wrong in games that all representing you know, this culture, we get the games after they have developed, you know. So to put something back to the studio and the studio working on it and changing it, so they really don't care.
This is a really common thing with so the consultancy that we run at Counterpoints Arts. A really common thing happens where productions will come to us and they'll go, hey, we'd love to work with you on this. Let's get in some writers and directors who are from this specific culture. We'd love for them to come and have a look at this game and consult on it. And then we'll ask them about like how far along they are in the process of making this film or this game or whatever it is. And it will be like, oh yeah, you know, we're about like 3 weeks away from releasing it or something. It's like we can't do anything in that time. That's nothing. There's no amount of work that we could do. And often what it comes across as, even if it's not intentional, is that these people have come to us essentially at a point where we can't actually change anything. And then that means when they release the game, they can say, well, we consulted with these organizations that do all of these things, and they said it was fine. So as far as we're concerned, we've done our job. Which, yeah, it's sort of disheartening to hear that is also a practice that you had experienced.
No, it was really like, it turned from like the day I got the job, I was really happy, and just suddenly became like a nightmare job. I'm a video game tester, but it's an awful job, like really bad. And then one day, while I was like, I don't know, play testing, I got a call and I got accepted at BBC, which later I became a tech journalist, and then later I was focusing on video games. And there was also an issue there because I was only brought in if the topic has to do with the Middle East on a very kind of specific level. But I wouldn't be brought in when as just an opinion in a general matter or in a topic that I am very knowledgeable about more than other people. So that kind of bias and this kind of like ignorance and representation goes from the tech world itself, which I think 70% or 69% of the gaming industry are run by white people, and 71% of them are men. And that's considering that there is also Japan on the other end, which will probably gonna take like 30% or something like that. So that's the kind of world that we're talking about. Obviously, there is now like a shift, and people are realizing that, wait, there is like a market, a big market, like in these countries. And by that market, I mean like the Gulf countries, because they can afford to pay these games. Because if you go to other places that, I'm from Egypt, so I was there and I wanted to buy an Nintendo Switch game, and I realized that it's just the game, not the Switch itself. It's the salary of a month salary of like a new graduate there. So
it's basically impossible to play any games.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say I played like SNES and stuff like that. What I mean is that I played Chinese knockoffs of it.
Right. Okay.
When I was young, I've never really seen like a proper one, except when I was an adult and I can buy my own toys, you know. So that's also something that maybe the gaming industry needs to learn from the film industry, because you've got like Netflix and Amazon Prime and all these things. They found a way to be still accessible in all the places, no matter what's the income or how devaluated the currency is. But the video game industry hasn't yet found that kind of balance. But then you have statistics that show that almost 50% of people in Egypt and almost like 60% of people in Saudi Arabia are gamers. Wow. That's an insane statistic. That's like a whole like other world that you need to explore as an industry, and to also bring revenue. You don't have to make cartridges or CDs. You can just, you know, distribute digital games that won't cost you anything, and just put it for a bit cheap and kind of target that market a bit more, represent them a bit better. I'm just going to make loads of money.
This is the thing that we sort of always harp on about at Counterpoints, which is even if you don't care about the moral implications of diversifying media or anything like that, you'll make so much money. Like if you have the worst intentions possible, it still makes sense for you to represent people on screen properly, because you will make more money. With that in mind, we are sort of gearing. We've got about 15 or so minutes left, just before we throw it out to perhaps some questions from the audience. So start thinking about them. Ideally questions, not statements. I have to say that because I've done so many of these, and then sometimes people will like recite War and Peace, and I don't know what to, like, I can't respond to it, and you can't be rude to them either, because it is what it is. So just please have a question mark at the end of whatever it is that you're saying, and if you can just vaguely hint at the idea that there is a question, we'll work with it. Tommy, Maryam, I just wanted to ask you guys about, I suppose it's probably not too much of a stretch to say that while video games are sort of doing better now, they haven't been for quite a long while. And I think in that time we've seen films do a lot better in that sense, and also worse in some aspects. But there is like a general sort of acceptance in films where it's like, okay, you do have to represent these things properly. Whereas in video games, it's still a little bit like not necessarily there. And I'm sorry, Toby.
I feel like kind of to what you're saying there, I guess there's that element of like being that bit further detached from reality when you're gaming, because it's you know, it's the gaming world, you know. It's not, and like with films as well, you know, I sort of feel like there's this idea of realism, and I'm sure there's like numerous PhDs on this sort of thing, but it's not real. So like sorry, I don't know where I was going with that. It was something. What were you saying just prior to that? I was talking about
films and how like they have essentially done better in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Whereas video games, maybe it's, you know, the tide is turning a little bit.
Yeah, I forgot what my point was completely.
That's fine.
Anyway,
Still a good point anyway.
No, but yeah, like. There was sort of two things I want to go back on before that as well.
Sure.
What Faz was saying about playing those games, because like we were playing them here in England, and that was quite a weird experience in itself in terms of these liminal spaces that we're talking about, because you're sort of there post 2003 invasion of Iraq, for example, kind of like looking around like, okay, so I'm the enemy, we're the enemy. Okay, oh, right. God, all right, sort of. But like for me, you know, I can sort of be in situations and pass as not Iraqi too. So like there's a kind of, you know, hiding thing that's going on. But then within that, you're then playing games where, like we're talking about, you're essentially killing people who are from where you're from, but they're completely two-dimensional, non-real people. So this kind of dehumanization thing that you grow up with, of like, you don't really count. You're kind of like, you're an NPC. You're very disposable. Like the heroes and the main characters are the people who are coming and killing you. So, aka the society you're in. So those liminal spaces, kind of thing, like we're talking about, you're kind of occupying a very odd, like, but at the same time you're playing it. So like, you know, you're there being like, yeah, okay, come on, yeah. So that's kind of a weird one. I also was going to touch on when you're talking about plasticity. I thought that was really interesting. Like, again, the first game I was on, Expeditions Rome, again, really cool. Like, you know, it's covering loads of places in the Roman Empire, like of that era, and they've generally tried to get people from those backgrounds playing the characters. But I was playing, went in, and I think it was basically an accident. I ended up playing a Greek character, and like I'm okay because I'm quite good with accents. So I'd spent the night studying kind of like what, you know, like there's videos you can see online of like Greek people talking about how their accents are in English and how to kind of shift things, because it's actually meant to be a helpful guide for Greek people. And then so I went in doing that. That was okay. But then it was interesting. We talked about, I was playing a few different Egyptian characters, and we were talking about, I was like, so do you want me to do an actual Egyptian accent? And so I was talking with Faz about this earlier, where I was like, you know, that's quite a specific accent. You know, there's certain like sounds that, like, you know, TH might go to Z, or, you know, this kind of thing, that people who don't know the region and don't know that sort of thing might like try to pick up as like, well, that's a bit weird, isn't it? You know, this kind of thing of like conforming. And the director, she was like, yeah, honestly, like, I have this thing where she said she's done it with Australian actors in Australia or American actors in America, where they're happy to do English accents over there, but they won't do it internationally because it's a perception-based thing, isn't it? So you got to like fit into what the, you know, people are expecting for you, particularly if you are just like an NPC in this moment, like who's paying that much attention to detail, that kind of thing. But it does speak to a larger thing of like, I don't know, I ended up doing just like a sort of generic Arabic accent as opposed to going specifically in on the Egyptian thing. And like, that's fine. But then like, I'm kind of like, you've said you're asking for Egyptian though, you know? So it's that like, it's a funny one. I was meant to ask as well, Laith, for you to talk. I remember you telling me about that game. I feel like it's set in Iraq, and it was like,
oh, another one. The one that got
I think it did cancel it. I think they did cancel it.
First, it's like 6 Days in Fallujah or something.
6 Days in Fallujah. All right.
We should
like, who thought that was a good idea? Like, come on.
Yes.
6 days in Fallujah. Anyway, I'll hand over the mic. Sorry.
No. But it is like, you know, we were all talking together outside. It was like, Maryam, you were talking about how like it is interesting. It's like these things are being made, and like it's kind of complete. It obviously eventually there were, you know, there was a backlash and everything. But the idea that we're sort of looking at these horrific moments in time and being like, oh yeah, but what if you were playing that in first person, and then what if we just, you know, added microtransactions to this?
That's what I was like. My point early on that I forgot was exactly this of like it, like in terms of the correlation between film, how film's catching up versus games, is like because gaming is like that much further removed from like reality to an extent, like it sort of feels more okay for it to be lagging almost in some way. That's sort of like because it's like, oh, but then it's like you're not really clocking how much it's feeding into culture.
Exactly, because arguably these games are way more popular than the vast majority of films. Like
and socially as well, because you know, if you're setting up with a bunch of mates to go and play this, like I was saying to Laith, I was like remembering that at school, like we'd set up to play COD, and we'd be like, yeah, let's go play Mogadishu. You know, that's a really messed up thing. Like that's really messed up. Yeah. But that's like at the age of like, you know, 13 or whatever, you're like not thinking about that at all. Yeah. But then you're kind of programming yourself. So like there is a responsibility, but whether it gets taken sort of seriously or not is another, you know.
You become desensitized from it 100%. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
I was saying you definitely become desensitized from it. I know when I was a kid, I used to play a bunch of games, and yeah, like the COD campaigns. It was always like the bad guys were Arabs, and I kind of just made a joke out of it with my friends. We'd be playing and we'd just make a joke because not much we can say really about it. We can't change the narrative. It's the gaming studios that are doing it, and that's why Ubisoft, not to like glorify Ubisoft, but Assassin's Creed, that was a really, really good representation. And I got a good reception as well. So
yeah, that is one of those things where it is sort of like a weirdly funny thing as well, because when it comes to like video games and how that sort of thing is viewed, it's interesting. Yeah, it's really like these things are arguably more important than representations in film, but all of the discussion about representation largely revolves around film and revolves around TV and things of that nature. It's like exactly as you say, it's just like these are essentially social things.
Yeah.
A lot way more social than perhaps films and TV are, because people will dedicate months and months and months of their lives around these one type of game.
And so it's so personal as well, it's like a super personal experience as well, because you can be playing at any time of day on your ones or with other people or whatever, but like in your own space, and I know you could say the same about viewing habits and all of that. Like there was something as well I was thinking that, because I was talking to my brother, so when I was younger, gaming for me and my brother was that my brother's 5 years older than me, so he got to play and I got to watch, or like when he was playing football games, I got to commentate. Because I'm good at commentating. Yeah, I'm not buying that now. But one of the games that he used to play and I used to love watching was the Devil May Cry series. And something I just really enjoyed about that was because when I told him about this, he was like, "Oh yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of diversity in games in there. You got like everything in a game," and I was like, that's a fair point. Like that's kind of not like necessarily what we're talking about, but yeah, like, and thinking about that with Devil May Cry was like, for those who don't know, is like you're playing as Dante, this main character who's half human, half demon, and he's kind of like between, talking about liminal spaces. He's like doing a lot of stuff between the kind of like demon world and Earth, and like this kind of conflict that's going on. And I like loved that and loved the storyline, all that. Like I think being like between cultures myself as a person, like really relating to that, like, but not on a kind of such an explicit level. So like you can do it in so many different ways, like it's not, but I guess when we're talking about exactly specific representation, it would have been cool to play a game, it could have been like Aladdin or something that was like, but like that did something.
Don't give them ideas. Not
yeah, do you know what I mean?
Aladdin,
Like, not Aladdin, but as we're talking about that era, it could have been like, but the game where actually like the that's why I thought like I was so excited about Prince of Persia, and I felt a little like quite crestfallen when the trailer came out and there was so much trolling going on. I was just like, but they've like made such an effort, and it's really like, and then you kind of clock like, very naive of me, but I'd literally just joined Instagram, things like this, and I was just like, this is the people say horrible things the whole time, don't they? Like, so that was very naive of me, but like,
yeah, but it's been great that the feedback has been so great once the game actually released, which just goes to show that they actually did do all the work properly. We are gearing up to, we probably got about 6 or 7 minutes left. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to raise your hand now while I'm, there we go, great. I don't know if we,
Hi, thanks so much for the talk. It was great. I'm also of Arab descent, so this is gorgeous for me. I'm really interested in the conversation around what you were talking about with Prince of Persia, and I think we're seeing it a lot in, when a black woman was cast as a mermaid, how could they? The ever rolling conversation about James Bond and what race that person should be, etc., etc. I work in the DEIB space. I'm not so familiar with the gaming world, so I'd be really interested. I am getting to a question, I promise.
No, that's fine. I'm enjoying this. This is his own talk.
I'd be really interested to know. You say that you feel that there is, obviously with the examples you've mentioned, changing in the turning in the tide, and that's amazing. Interested to know where you still see things being problematic, and what changes really need to be made in that space.
Cool, amazing question. Who wants to take that? Does anybody?
Quite a lot, I feel. I would say like from the perspective of like a performer's perspective, it's cool because when like stuff comes out in terms of like what are they called, the things that get sent out for when they want people to audition. I've totally blanked on the word, but anyway, casting, exactly. Casting comes out, the breakdowns are always like pretty specific to ethnicity and like wanting to match things up, and then like they'll have the ones where, and they kind of do explicitly state, we want this, that, and the other. So like the studios that I've been working with certainly have been pretty on it on that front, so that's been cool. But in terms of like where like things to work on, do you know what, like actually sorry, like just going back to what you were saying about the TV being a bit like going a bit further ahead, I feel like the dedication to it from what I've witnessed in the gaming world is stronger in terms of when people are on it about like making this making the effort to go in on something. They really just like commit to it, and like with Assassin's Creed set in Baghdad, like I read an article about that where it was like a historian, because they consulted loads of historians to try and recreate 9th century Baghdad, and like it was kind of like a historian's dream. It's like a historian's, like, it was like kind of as close as they could get visually, this kind of thing. So like they really like go in on it and invest. But I guess kind of what we're talking about in terms of like not finding it so easy to vilify, like thinking about the impact that making a game, like for instance the next COD, which is going to be, what is it, 2003 war? Is it first Gulf War? Is it which?
And also Mogadishu, which is not related.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of like like grouping together of like Arab conflicts or whatever, but also like I don't know. There is a responsibility, like socially, if we're going to move forward in some way, to sort of change how we relate to each other via these sorts of things, because these are like quite vital connections that you're making at quite a young age about like, oh, okay, yeah, because we're always at war with these people. So why are we carrying on the cycles of war? Oh, because we're like sort of programming like, kids to think that's a normal thing. So like that kind of thing of just like maybe like actually thinking, I mean, like money talks, I guess, and all this stuff. But like it seems, for instance, when Laith said that about COD, like the next one, I was a bit like, I thought we were like a bit past that. Like, are we, like, do we, you can invent, I don't know, what, like, maybe don't do it with like space or whatever, because then if we meet aliens, we'll just want to fight them too. But, like, I don't know. But you know what I mean? That kind of thing, I feel like there's a lot of foot dragging on that front, because it's easy. It's kind of lazy, and it's easy as well, It's like, let's go for the, the stereotype. Like, I mean, have COD done like a Vietnam War thing?
I believe they have, but it was also equally, how do I put this? What you would imagine.
Okay, yeah. Like, do you know, like, going through the trauma of those wars already, and then recycling it for, like, entertainment purposes as opposed to reflection, seems pretty, like, cynical, but maybe that's, again, quite a naive thing for me to...
I think it's a very good point, especially when it's like, I'm aware of like how heavy a point this is, but we've essentially been playing these games where we watch just thousands of Arab people being laid to waste, and then currently we are watching like something unfold currently in Palestine, where we are watching again sort of like thousands of Arab people being laid to waste, and you can't help but feel like that perhaps one of perhaps representations of us in media may have helped make that more acceptable, which is, yes, question. Let's go to you. Here we go.
So I've been trying to think about, so I teach at university, and I've been trying to get students to engage with serious issues, but through games. And I thought and not computer games, but by making board games. And I thought games is kind of quite interesting in terms of its kind of decolonial potential, that people can make their own rules. But I'm kind of struggling with the idea that games trivialize issues in some way as well. And I don't know if you find if there's a way around that. So.
I think, well, I'll go to Faz really quickly, but it's like, I think we've also seen great examples of that. So there's a game, I'm sure you all know it, called Papers, Please, which I think is like a phenomenal way to sort of explore things of that nature. But
yeah, I think exactly. There's so many games now that I mean, the idea of games just being for children is of the past for sure, and how games can handle heavy topics. There's so many games that can do that now. But talking about trivializing, I think it's something about I'm a video game illustrator as well, and I think something about the artwork is specifically like has to be mentioned, because like when you think of like some games, so you also asked about like current games where you see problems. It doesn't have to be like in your face kind of problem, but some games like the newest Mario Kart, for example. I don't know if anybody plays Mario Karts. Yeah, so you have like London, and the London track. What are you gonna see in the London track? Like, yeah, Big Ben, Red Bus, and I don't know what phone booths and stuff like that. There's Italy as well. There's Greece, and there is also. Is there Cairo? There is Cairo, but it's not called Cairo. It's called dry desert. And it is, yeah, and it is like I mean, there's it's clearly Cairo because there's Sphinx, there's pyramids, but it's dry desert. So something about the artwork, like you always like when you think Tokyo, you think of like neon lights and rain and kind of see-through umbrellas. But when you think of Cairo, you still think desert, camel, stuff like that. And I think if it's just like people kind of like paid attention in the art kind of section of things, to kind of just have like a bit more non-trivializing kind of representation. That's not even of people, but of places. I have been drawing a lot of like streets in Cairo with more accurate representation, and I've been getting a lot of messages telling me, I really want to see more of this from people from there. And it's just because you cannot, you don't see that. That's just talking about places. Yeah.
Could I add as well, if I've got time, just to add one, like, just about that as well. But just in terms of like, this trivializing thing is like, there is an aspect of like, like trivializing that is also quite helpful, I think. Like, I don't know if anyone watches like, cartoons. Like I watch a lot of anime or cartoons that kind of like, but like Avatar, for instance, The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra subsequently, like engage with really quite deep, like huge concepts, but like they just sort of like, that's the premise of the whole thing. And people could say, because it's a kid's cartoon, oh, it's, like trivializing that kind of thing. But I think it's super actually educational because people are in a much more receptive space and they're kind of much more open to it without realizing they are. So that's kind of one of the powers, I think, of games is like, it does, there's an aspect to it, like, we're saying trivializing killing and all of this stuff. But if you use it in a kind of more healthy, conscious way, you're actually in such a place to just gently like show people, like people arrive at those places by themselves as opposed to sort of being, fed or whatever.
I think that's a lovely place to sort of end it there. I would also like to emphasize Avatar: The Last Airbender is Game of Thrones for adults, as far as I'm concerned. It is a phenomenal show. Everyone should go watch that. Anyway,
and Korra.
Korra is good, but we'll
talk about this later.
We'll talk about this later. We'll take. We've gone over a little bit. We will take any other questions if you go find us afterwards. Thank you so much for having us. We're Counterpoints Arts.
Thanks
Please
very
have
much.
a round of applause for our great panel.
Thanks, everyone.